could not have known these facts about human development in the 7th century because most of them were not discovered until the 20th century. This is a leech, and this is the human embryo, about 23 days. I think you have to agree that the similarity between these structures is amazing.
The key word in both is al-Ghaib. At this stage is known to no one except Allah.
The rapid growth and dramatic changes which occurred after the bones have been clothed by muscles have been mentioned in the Holy Quran 1400 years ago.
Surah 79, Ayah 32 states, also in the context of creation, "And the mountains hath he firmly fixed." Similar mention of mountains is found in several other surahs. It is permissible to interpret this to imply that mountains are rooted and that modern geophysics has established deep crustal roots for the axial parts of mountain systems at converging plate boundaries. We need research into the history of early Middle Eastern oral traditions to know whether, in fact, such historical events have been reported. If there is no such record, it strengthens the belief that God transmitted through Muhammad bits of his knowledge that we have only discovered for ourselves in recent times.
1,400 years ago, when the world was immersed in darkness, the Quran was revealed, which brought light to a beleaguered world. And whereas the earlier books came with many scientific mistakes, due to the hand of man having delved into them, the Quran had none of these contradictions. The world thought there could be no reconciliation between religion and science. But the Quran mentioned many scientific facts in great detail, like how a human being developed in the mother's womb, and described other scientific facts which amaze the world's renowned scientists and scientific community.
The Holy Quran, a divine scripture, was sent down to mankind 14 centuries ago. From the day of its revelation to the day of judgment, it will remain as the last and sole guide for humanity. There are countless proofs that the Quran is the Word of God. Such examples are its literary qualities that no human being can imitate, the fact that it is free of all inconsistency, and the way it foretells the future and contains certain hidden information. The Quran contains another miracle that proves it to be God's revelation. There are a remarkable number of scientific truths that are contained in it. In this book that was revealed over 14 centuries ago, there are innumerable examples of information which humanity has only been able to uncover using today's technology. People at that time were devoid of science. Conceptions of the nature and the universe were based on superstition and myth. For example, the Arabs supposed that the earth was flat and that mountains supported the sky above. Yet, all these superstitious beliefs were eradicated with the revelation of the Quran. The verse, "God is He who raised up the heavens without any support," invalidated the false beliefs of the Arabs regarding the sky. The Quran contains information on a great many subjects that nobody could have known at the time, from the creation of the universe to the making of man, from the structure of the atmosphere to the balances on Earth. Recent scientific discoveries have shown just how miraculous this information is. In the early 20th century, the prevalent view across the world was that the universe was infinite. According to this view, known as the static universe model, the universe had no end or beginning. This view dominated the scientific world for many years. This was the case until the evidence for a theory rocked this erroneous belief. The Big Bang Theory. The evidence proved that an explosion emanated from a single point some 15 billion years ago from nothingness. The entire universe, together with matter and time, came into existence as a result of a great explosion that occurred a long time ago. Many scientific findings today support the Big Bang Theory. It has now been proved that the universe had a beginning and was brought into being from nothing through a huge explosion. This fact, proved as the result of long research in the field of physics, was also declared 14 centuries ago in the Noble Quran. He created the heavens and the earth from nothing. Research carried out thanks to modern-day advanced technology, observation, and calculation have shed light on many secrets concerning the universe. One of these is the fact that it is constantly expanding. This idea of expansion was first raised in the early 20th century. The Russian physicist Alexander Friedmann and the Belgian cosmologist Georges Lemaitre theoretically calculated that the universe is in constant motion and that it is expanding. This notion was confirmed by the use of observational data in 1929. While observing the sky with a telescope, Edwin Hubble, the American astronomer, discovered a surprising fact. The stars and galaxies were constantly moving away from each other. This discovery is regarded as one of the greatest in the history of astronomy. A universe where everything constantly moves away from everything else implied a constantly expanding universe. Bodies in the universe were like points on the surface of a balloon being inflated. The more a balloon is inflated, the further away the points on its surface move from one another. Similarly, celestial bodies also move away from one another as the universe expands. There was no technology and no science of astronomy 14 centuries ago when the Quran was revealed. Nobody was then aware of this fact. Yet, it was clearly stated in Quranic verses that the universe was expanding. And it is we who have constructed the heavens with might, and verily it is we who are steadily expanding it. The human body. a flawless structure with many fine details that still have yet to be discovered. Scientists engaged in research using today's advanced technology obtained astonishing results concerning the human body. One of these dealt with the tissues in the body. Living tissues contain 26 different elements. 6 of these are the most common: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur. These basic elements represent 95% of all tissues. This, in turn, represents important scientific evidence of the information revealed in the Quran, the creation of man out of clay. The building blocks that constitute almost all the human body are present in the soil, either in free or compound forms. The first human being was created by God, who shaped clay into human form and breathed the soul into it. This miraculous event is described in the Quran. Your Lord said to the angels, I am going to create a human being out of clay. When I have formed him and breathed my spirit into him, fall down in prostration to him. In another verse, God tells us that we created man from an extract of clay. The Arabic word sulala, translated as extract in the verse, means representative example or essence. The information revealed in the Quran 1400 years ago confirms what modern science tells us: the fact that the same elements are employed in human creation as those found in the soil. Let us now consider all those human beings who have ever lived and who are living today. Every person has his or her own set of fingerprints. Even identical twins having the very same DNA sequence have different fingerprints. That is because there is a special formation in the fingerprints. Fingerprints attain their final shape before birth and remain the same for a lifetime unless a permanent scar appears. That is why fingerprints are accepted as a very important proof of identity, exclusive to their owner. Scientists discovered this important feature only in the later 19th century. However, in the Quran, God points to the fingertips, which did not attract anyone's attention at that time, and calls our attention to their importance. Does man imagine we will not reassemble his bones? Yes, we are able to put together in perfect order the very tips of his fingers.
The Quran describes not only the development of external form, but emphasizes also the internal stages, the stages inside the embryo of its creation and development, emphasizing major events recognized by contemporary science. Thank you for your attention.
As a scientist, I can only deal with things which I can specifically see. I can understand embryology and developmental biology. I can understand the words that are translated to me from the Quran. As I gave the example before, if I were to transpose myself into that era, knowing what I do today and describing things, I could not describe the things which were described. I see no reason, I see no evidence for the fact to refute the concept that this individual, Muhammad, had to be developing this information from someplace. So I see nothing here in conflict with the concept that divine intervention was involved.
1,400 years ago, when the world was immersed in darkness, the Quran was revealed, which brought light to a beleaguered world. And whereas the earlier books came with many scientific mistakes, due to the hand of man having delved into them, the Quran had none of these contradictions. The world thought there could be no reconciliation between religion and science. But the Quran mentioned many scientific facts in great detail, like how a human being developed in the mother's womb, and described other scientific facts which amaze the world's renowned scientists and scientific community.
Sperm undertake a journey into the mother's body until they reach the ovum. Only 1,000 out of 250 million sperm succeed in reaching the ovum. At the end of this 5-minute race, the ovum, half the size of a grain of salt, will let only one of the sperm in. However, this finding that was determined in our own day reveals something that was previously unknown. That is, the substance of man is not the whole semen, but only a small part of it. This is explained in the Quran as follows. Does man reckon he will be left uncontrolled without purpose? Was he not once a drop of ejected semen? As close inspection shows, we are informed in the Quran that man is made not from the entire semen, but only a small part of it. This is also what modern science says. He creates you stage by stage in your mother's wombs in threefold darkness. That is God, your Lord. Sovereignty is His. There is no deity but Him. So what has made you deviate? Modern biology has revealed that the embryological development of the baby takes place in the manner revealed in the verse. The expression, a threefold darkness, indicates 3 dark regions involved during the development of the embryo. These are the darkness of the abdomen, the darkness of the womb, and the darkness of the placenta. It is also pointed out in this verse that a human being is created in the mother's womb in 3 distinct stages. In Basic Human Embryology, a fundamental reference text in embryology, this fact is stated as follows. The life in the uterus has 3 stages: pre-embryonic, first 2.5 weeks, embryonic, until the end of the 8th week, and fetal, from the 8th week to labor. Information on the development in the mother's womb became available only after observations with modern devices. Yet, just like many other scientific facts, in a miraculous way, God draws our attention to these items of information in the verses of the Quran. The fact that such detailed and accurate information was given in the Quran at a time when people had scarce information on medical matters is clear evidence that it is the Word of God. The development of a human being in its mother's womb is full of miracles. The fetus's ears began to develop as early as the 22nd day of pregnancy and become fully functional in the 4th month. After that, the fetus can hear sounds in the mother's womb. For that reason, the sense of hearing forms before the other vital functions for a newborn baby. The order set out in the Quran is striking from that point of view. It is He who has created hearing, sight, and minds for you. What little thanks you show! God brought you out of your mother's wombs, knowing nothing at all, and gave you hearing, sight, and minds, so that perhaps you would show thanks. Close examination shows that the senses God refers to in the Quran are always mentioned in a particular order: hearing, sight, and understanding. That is exactly the same order in which a baby's senses develop. In short, one of the discoveries of modern science, the order of development of human organs, is clearly stated in the Quran. Particular emphasis is placed in the Quran on one element: iron. In Surat al-Hadid, meaning iron, we are informed, "And we also sent down iron, in which there lies great force, and which has many uses for mankind." The word anzalna translated as "we sent down," and used for iron in the verse, could be thought of having a metaphorical meaning to explain that iron has been given to benefit people. But when we take into consideration the literal meaning of the word, we realize that this verse implies a very significant scientific miracle. This meaning is being physically sent down from the sky, as in the case of rain and sun rays. Modern astronomical findings have disclosed that the iron found in our planet has come from giant stars in outer space. Not only the iron on Earth, but also the iron in the entire solar system comes from outer space, since the temperature in the sun is inadequate for the formation of iron. Iron can only be produced in much larger stars than the sun, where the temperature reaches a few 100 million degrees. When the amount of iron exceeds a certain level in a star, the star can no longer accommodate it, and eventually explodes in what is called a nova, or a supernova. These explosions make it possible for iron to be given off into space. All the iron on Earth came from outer space as a result of this process. In other words, iron was sent down to Earth, just like we are told in the verse. It is clear that this information could not have been established in the 17th century, when the Quran was revealed.
The significance of geological ideas or perceptions from the Quran and Hadith, it is first necessary to provide some background information describing where geology is today and how it got there. Geology began as a science slightly less than 200 years ago. Although various geological perceptions date back to Aristotle over 2,000 years ago, these perceptions were never integrated into an identifiable science until James Hutton recognized the implications of the now famous angular unconformity at Siccar Point in western Scotland in 1788. The Earth's crust was deformed, and these sediments, now cemented into rock, were tilted, and a plain was developed by erosion across their upturned edges. More sediments, a minimum of 2,100 meters thick, accumulated on this plain and in the course of time were cemented to form rock. Erosion of this thick series of rocks, which is still in progress at the present time, has cut a deep canyon through these rocks, exposing the evidence of their history. This deeply eroded land surface is essentially the only land surface that human beings have ever seen. But what a magnificent history is revealed. The vastness of this history is clearly demanded by the logical implications of the angular unconformity. This evidence that the Earth had a long history far beyond the memory of man was the basis for the science of geology. In the 2 centuries since Hutton saw and understood his angular unconformity in Scotland, geologists have been busy unraveling this history. The unraveling was helped by several additional fundamental but simple ideas. First, shells, bones, and plant remains found in rocks were recognized as records of life of the past. By the early 1800s, it was further recognized that the record of life in the rocks was different than it is today, and that the further back in time one went, that is, in lower and lower layers in the sequences of layered rocks, the more different the fossil record became. Thus, an empirical succession of geological ages was established. Each age was characterized by different assemblages of fossils found in the rocks. What do the Quran and Hadith say about all of this? Some key words from various parts of the Quran and Hadith have interesting implications. According to Surah 29, Ayah 20, God says, "Walk through the earth and see how God did originate creation." The story that I have just presented is the product of thousands of geologists walking through the earth, observing and thinking about their observations, primarily since the early 1800s. Next slide. Surah 79, Ayah 31, discussing creation and the earth, states, "He draweth out therefrom its moisture." Although this seems to be in a context of springs because the following phrase mentions pastures, it is permissible to consider that this refers to outgassing of volcanoes early in Earth history. Volcanic gases include large amounts of water vapor and carbon dioxide. We believe that volcanoes early in Earth's history were the sources for the oceans and the atmosphere, an understanding only reached within the last century. Next slide. Surah 79, Ayah 32 states, also in the context of creation, "And the mountains hath he firmly fixed." Similar mention of mountains is found in several other surahs. It is permissible to interpret this to imply that mountains are rooted and that modern geophysics has established deep crustal roots for the axial parts of mountain systems at converging plate boundaries. Several surahs mention geological perceptions tied to earthquakes. Next slide. Surah 86, Ayah 12, in a context of predicting happenings on the Day of Judgment, states, "And by the earth, which has faults." And Surah 67, Ayah 16, next slide, in a context of punishment for unbelievers, states, "Are you sure that God will not cause you to be swallowed up by the earth when it is turbulent?" It is permissible to interpret these surahs as evidence of the awareness of great faults within the earth and of a turbulent interior, parts of the recent developments in plate tectonics. Other surahs seem to refer to changing dimensions of continents. Next slide. In a context of creation, Surah 70, Ayah 30 says, "And the earth," here in the sense of continents, "moreover hath he expanded." Next slide. Surah 13, Ayah 41, in a context referring to the power of God, states, "See they not that we gradually reduce the continents?" And in Surah 13, Ayah 3, in the context of creation, we see, "And it is he who expanded the earth and set thereon mountains standing firm and rivers." The concept of change in the geographic dimensions of the continents is a very modern concept. Perhaps the most intriguing thoughts are from a hadith in Sahih Muslim, where Muhammad states as one of the signs of the coming of the Day of Judgment, next slide, that Arab areas will return to being fertile and green and with rivers. The archaeological and geological evidence that they once were green and will become green again is less than a century old. I have been asked, could Muhammad personally have known these things? The answer of a cautious scientist is, it is not impossible, but it would require a very sophisticated awareness of natural history. The Middle East has been and still is one of the more earthquake-prone parts of the world. Oral tradition may have mentioned fractures opening during earthquakes, and certainly the earth trembles as if its interior were turbulent on such occasions. In summary, the Islamic texts can be divided into three categories related to the past, the present, and the future. References to the past are expanding and shrinking of the earth, fixing of the mountains, deriving moisture from the earth's interior, and description of the past climate of the Arabian Peninsula. References to the present are the presence of great faults, a turbulent earth interior, and changing dimensions of the continents. References to the future are predictions about the return of better climatic conditions to the Arabian Peninsula. What is the significance of these statements made 1,400 years ago long before the beginning of the new science of geology. We need research into the history of early Middle Eastern oral traditions to know whether, in fact, such historical events have been reported. If there is no such record, it strengthens the belief that God transmitted through Muhammad bits of his knowledge that we have only discovered for ourselves in recent times. We look forward to a continuing dialogue on the topic of science and the Quran in the context of geology.
A very important feature of mountains is indicated in a Quranic verse: the function of preventing shocks in the earth. We placed firmly embedded mountains on the earth so it would not move under them. And geology today confirms this characteristic of mountains. Formerly, it was thought that mountains were merely protrusions rising above the surface of the earth. However, in the 20th century, scientists realized that this was not actually the case. Those parts known as mountain root extended down as far as 10 to 15 times their own height. For example, Mount Everest, the summit of which stands approximately 9 kilometers above the surface of the earth, has a root deeper than 125 kilometers. Mountains emerge as a result of the movements and collisions of massive plates forming the Earth's crust. When two plates collide, the stronger one slides under the other. The one on the top bends and forms heights and mountains. The layer beneath proceeds under the ground and makes a deep extension downwards. These extensions are the mountain roots. Thanks to their roots, mountains fix the Earth's crust. Therefore, they prevent any sliding over the magma layer or amongst the layers themselves, and also prevent major earth tremors. With these features, mountains can be compared to nails holding strips of wood together. God tells us in the Quran, "Haven't we made the earth as a bed, and the mountains its pegs?" The fact that this function was revealed in the Quran at a time when it was unknown to anyone is another of this divine book's great miracles. Were it not for the fixing effect of the mountains, soil would not collect on the earth's surface, water would not accumulate in the soil, no plants could grow. In short, life on earth would be impossible. Through the mercy of God, however, the earth is capable of sustaining life. The Quran is the word of Almighty God, who created all things out of nothing, and who enfolds all beings with His knowledge. It is for these reasons that these facts that modern science has only recently discovered appear in the Quran, sent down 1400 years ago. In one verse, God reveals this about the Quran. If it had been from other than God, they would have found many inconsistencies in it. There is no inconsistency in the Quran. Furthermore, the information within our holy book, the Quran, reveals new miracles with every passing day. Human beings are meant to hold fast to this divine book revealed by God and to receive it with an open heart as their one and only guide in life. In the Quran, God tells us the following: "And this is a book we have sent down and blessed. So follow it and fear God, so that hopefully you will gain mercy."